plus konnichiwa, and Yobaseo. Will here of the POLIT'AI CHI, talking briefly and concisely about the slideshow montage of the video highlights in full coming up. Your presence through watching is honored. Hi. So, yeah, President went and did it again. I've written many a tweet pic about this. It's hard to defend him sometimes. But by the same token, Mr. Colin Kaepernick started this long before DJT was in football and basketball at my alma mater, blew up both my ankles, couldn't propagate out a career long enough to get a scholarship. You know, that's life. That's life in the NFL. You get $37 million, just don't start bitching and moaning about it. And so, Mr. Colin Kaepernick and everyone seeming to get Colin Kaepernickeritiis must be mindful of that. Yeah. Dude from Army there at Pittsburgh, the only one coming out. How embarrassing on behalf of the Steelers. Because it ain't all an American-African thing. I'm sure there's plenty of Caucasian dudes who could play, dudes like me. Don't laugh. Don't even go there. Because I know of what I speak. You know, Spielman and I, us middle and to late 40-somethings from Gen X, man, the intensity, it ain't manufactured. We've embraced working out as a lifetime thing. And we got life experience. This kind of stuff is really, you know, it's a fence-sitting kind of thing, but, you know, hey, there are certain things which are sacrosanct. Take a lesson from the Pittsburgh Penguins as opposed to this dude from Davidson. You know, they've gotten trounced like they should have out of the first round of the tournament because Davidson's one of them spoiler schools yours truly can remember going back to freaking the early 80s. You know, Del Curry, much better form, much better stroke. Yet his son's getting all the glory. Making a commercial for Infinity about his little kids, you know, living in a fantasy bubble world. Yeah, Infinity, you're going to sell a lot more cards that way. Alright, that's the reason for the pyrite. If I haven't already made that clear, roll it.
Earlier, are there other ways that you can in fact voice your disapproval with the racial situation in this country without making it about the flag?
I mean, the only point I'd make, and I have problems with it too, what he's doing, but the people in power don't get to tell the people who are protesting what's the right way to protest.
Well, no, everyone has.
That wasn't true in civil rights.
I'm not saying they don't have a right to do it. Everyone has a right to do it, but the fans don't have to, are not obliged to like it.
What you just heard is kind of a macro to the micro, which is its own macro. The anthem pays respect to a flag under assault from a group of states which would have loved to have flown another flag, a flag which would have denied American Africans the right to attend higher education centers of learning, the right to vote for women, or to own property, and so forth and so on. So why don't you just think about that before you start, you know, grabbing arms together thinking it's being all trendy and hip. It ain't. Alright, to my audience, regular audience, thanks for watching those silly DUIs while you're out there, roll clips.
Are there other ways that you can in fact voice your disapproval with the racial situation in this country without making it about the flag?
I mean, the only point I'd make, and I have problems with it too, what he's doing, but the people in power don't get to tell the people who are protesting what's the right way to protest.
Well, no, everyone has.
That wasn't true in civil rights.
I'm not saying they don't have a right to do it. Everyone has a right to do it, but the fans don't have to, are not obliged to like it, or go to the games and watch TV.
Carl?
A president has two very valuable assets, his time and his voice. And this president, when he engages in things like this, you know, we had an argument over whether Meryl Streep was a good actress or not. And now he has joined this fight, much to his own disadvantage. He's in the middle of two big fights, and this distracts from it. And there are better ways for the president. I was struck by a line in his speech in New York last week. At the UN. He said, we aspire to the approval of history. What if instead of standing up and swearing at them, he had said, I understand they have a right to do this, but we stand and respect our flag, not because of America's imperfections, but because we are constantly as a nation aspiring to the approval of history. We salute the flag because of the struggles and the sacrifices of generations of Americans to make this a better country. And that's why we stand and salute our flag and why we put our hand over our heart. And he could have come away the winner, but he is walking away from this, a loser in the minds of the American people, for exactly the reasons that you pointed out. He was against the federal government and against the government interfering in telling the Washington Redskins what their name ought to be. And now he is saying, fire those people if they don't stand and respect the flag. He's an aspirational figure. He should not be a condemnatory figure.
Okay, let's talk about health care, which is what should be there. It seems to me the real focus, and in fact it's the president stepping on his own message here.
Events are underway at the Invictus Games in Toronto. Hundreds of warriors from 17 different countries are taking part in the weeks-long event. We spoke with Tech Sergeant Patrick Roberts just yesterday, who later sent us this picture of him with First Lady Melania Trump. The First Lady greeted Team USA before last night's opening ceremony. Of course, she wished them the best of luck and thanked them for all they do, and of course their families as well. Sergeant Roberts is competing in track and field, swimming, and volleyball, and he just competed in the Warrior Games in Chicago. But he really talked about during our show yesterday just how special these games were, and when he competes, he gets lost in the competition, which we hear from a lot of wounded warriors.
Yeah, it will provide them purpose, provides them an athletic outlet, and at the same time, boy, what a contrast between the Invictus Games going on and their courage and their dedication to what we're seeing in the NFL and in pro sports over the past 48 or so hours, really across the NFL now in the past hour as kickoff happened, taking a knee during the national anthem. The Steelers from Pittsburgh wouldn't even come out onto the field. Only one member of that team would walk out onto the field for the national anthem, and he went to West Point, understanding really what the national anthem is about. And a lot's being made about this, and I think it will continue to be, that over in London this morning, the entire Jacksonville Jaguars took a knee with their owner, locking arms with their owner, and yet they stood for God Save the Queen and kneeled for the national anthem.
I think we're starting to see really reaction, like you said, from across the board. I mean, the president made the comments on Friday night. He made additional comments on Twitter. And then you see even friends of President Trump come out and have supported him and donated a lot to his campaign, millions to his campaigns and they still are saying that maybe this is the point where politics and sports should stay separate. So.
Yeah, pretty stunning words from Bob Kraft.
Let's hear that one more time. They did what?
That team would walk out onto the field for the national anthem, and he went to West Point, understanding really what the national anthem is about. And a lot's being made about this, and I think it will continue to be, that over in London this morning, the entire Jacksonville Jaguars took a knee with their owner, locking arms with their owner, and yet they stood for God Save the Queen and kneeled for the national anthem.
And then you heard that from Roger Goodell, who really set the tone almost immediately after the speech on Friday night, where he came out really defending his players at that point, and that set the tone. He was probably the first to respond, if I'm not mistaken, and then we started to see some of the ownership come out and some of the players come out. Obviously, it's starting to spread too. We did see NBA players respond. We saw LeBron James respond, and we're starting to see at least one MLB player take the knee during the national anthem, which is something that we could see because games are taking place throughout this afternoon. Yeah. And this is the Dolphins and Jets games where you could see the men there are linking arms, but there are also some people who are taking knees.
Well, yeah, and one guy who was singing the national anthem took a knee before he sang it. This all started with Colin Kaepernick a couple of years ago, and now you have to wonder if it's about how this all started, or if now it's about something entirely different in terms of these folks taking a knee. This has become a big political issue throughout the weekend, and will remain one, if at least by judging the conversation this weekend.
Fox News coverage of all this. Marion Rafferty standing by the West Coast. A slate of games just getting underway there. But let's begin with Kristen Fisher, who's in Somerset, New Jersey, near the President's Golf Club, and where he's been spending the weekend. Hi, Kristen.
Hey, Eric. Well, President Trump has clearly been watching these protests taking place at NFL games across the country today. His response, quote, "Great solidarity for our national anthem and for our country. Standing with locked arms is good. Kneeling is not acceptable. Bad ratings." So President Trump clearly continuing to urge Americans to boycott these NFL games if owners refuse to fire players for taking a knee during the national anthem. Now, this issue has consumed the administration. Today, the Treasury Secretary was on another Sunday show to talk about tax reform. The White House Legislative Director, Mark Short, was on, supposed to be talking about the latest effort to repeal and replace Obamacare, and yet the very first thing that both administration officials were asked about was this controversy involving the NFL. Mark Short actually equated the controversy to high school coaches coming under fire for leading prayers for their players. Listen.
They're getting punished and disciplined for asking their players to pray. Yet in the NFL, players who take a knee over a flag that many of our generations preceding us have died to protect the freedoms there, they somehow get honored as martyrs by the media. The president is pointing out that that shouldn't be accepted. They have a First Amendment right to do that, but NFL owners also have a right to fire those players.
And this is all happening just one day after President Trump rescinded his invitation for Golden State Warriors guard Steph Curry to visit the White House after winning the NBA championship. Now, the entire team isn't going, but the hockey team that just won the Stanley Cup, well, they're taking a different approach. I'm talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they put out a statement this morning that reads, quote, "The Pittsburgh Penguins respect the institution of the Office of the President and the long-standing tradition of championship teams visiting the White House. Any agreement or disagreement with the president's politics, policies, or agenda can be expressed in other ways."
During the national anthem, dozens of Jaguars and Ravens players took a knee during the Star Spangled Banner at the game in London today. Others stood with their arms locked together. Marianne Rafferty is live in Carson, California at the StubHub Center. And Marianne, have you talked to any fans there? What are they saying?
Actually, we did a little bit earlier. We talked to fans who agree with the protest by the players and some who completely disagree and think it's unpatriotic. But they all pretty much said the same thing, which was, you know, it's everyone has the right to protest if that's what they want to do, and it's not going to stop them from coming to any of the games or watching the games on TV. We have seen displays like this of solidarity from NFL players around the country. We're talking about 100 players who took a knee today in Chicago, the Steelers-Bears game. Nearly the entire team stayed in the locker room during the national anthem in order to avoid controversy, except for one player, Alejandro Villanueva, a West Point graduate and Army Ranger who stood proudly outside a tunnel with his hand over his heart. Now, this controversy all started on Friday when President Trump was at a political rally in Alabama and suggested that players who protest by taking a knee should be fired.